computer. All right. Well, so welcome everybody. Today's session is Advanced G Suite. Again, if you haven't already, type in this short link at bit.ly/advancedgs. We'll get you the slideshow for today. On the second slide, there's a link for signing in here. So just click on that sign in link, and that will take you over to a Google form to sign in. If you're watching this, the recorded version, of course, you don't have to do that. But if you're live with us here now, please go ahead and sign in for me. So let's go ahead and continue on here. So here's our to-do list. We have a question in the chat. I'm on the second slide and I click it in advance. Oh, she got it. Okay. All right. So here is our to-do list for today. So if you've come to my sessions before, this is how I like to organize things. If you're new to one of my sessions, I always like to organize things in these to-do lists. I was a high school social studies teacher, and I like to have these little check boxes, and these are our learning objectives for today. And then at the end of today, we'll basically just check each of these things off. All right. Each of these are linked as well to their section of the slideshow. This whole slideshow is super, super long. It's like 90 slides long or something like that, 91. So there's a ton of stuff here, so you can just click and jump to that section. So if you come back and refer to the slideshow later and you're like, oh, I want to go and learn more about, sheets, I can just jump right to that section from there. Okay. All right, so with that being said, here's our to-do list for today. We'll start out with an easy one with Google Keep, then we'll go into Google Drawings, and then Forms and Classroom. Then we'll go into Google Sheets, do some more advanced stuff. If you've watched the beginner G Suite, we kind of hit on a few things in Google Sheets. In today's session, we'll do a little bit more. Then we'll go into Google Sites, and we'll also look at Google Meet for a little bit too, which I'm sure if you're doing some remote learning, you're either using Zoom or Meet. Those are kind of the two big ones. And so we'll look at Google Meet today and how to use it. And we'll go into Google Maps and the other kind of apps that go along with Google Maps. And there's a few other miscellaneous things. And then at the end, we'll do some wrap up and questions and work time and all that fun stuff. All right. And the idea is we'll plan for lunch right around 12 p.m. for lunch for an hour. So wherever we get to, we'll probably be through probably the left column probably by then. So we'll see. All right. So let's go ahead and just dive in now. Here on slide number 4, if you are seeking graduate credit, here on slide number 4 are a couple of links for you. The top link here is the instructions to register for graduate credit. And the bottom link here is the guidelines for what you need to actually do to earn the graduate credit. So there's all your info there. If you have questions, feel free to email me. So let's go ahead and start talking about some G Suite. So keeping up to date with all the stuff that Google does is super important because as I'm sure you noticed, Google loves to just update things and change things seemingly every day, right? They're changing things all the time. So this website here, gsuite.google.com/what's new, is always going to show you the new and upcoming stuff that's happening, and it'll show you any new kind of nifty stuff that's happening. So like last week we had creating pointers in Google Drive to your different files. So you can essentially have a Google Drive file in more than one folder or location, basically making shortcuts for a file to show up in several different folders. So that's kind of a cool thing. So you don't have to have the the documents kind of stuck in one place. It's kind of a nifty thing. And of course, you can kind of explore that website for a ton of new stuff here. For our purposes, that's just a little glance for you, so you guys can check that out at your leisure. And again, just being in the know, seeing what's new. You don't have to, obsessively check this stuff by any means. You can come in here and look at the updates for admins. So if you are a G Suite admin, you can see what's new for them, or the update blog for kind of the general new stuff that's happening. The G Suite Learning Center, this is where it really breaks down app by app, where you can basically figure out how to do anything with any one of the G Suite apps. You can pretty much just search for whatever you like. There's also all these opening little drop-down boxes here for you to check out. All right, all these things you can kind of play around with and check out at your leisure here. So now let's go ahead and actually dive into our first actual app for today, and that's Google Keep. And like I said at the beginning here, if you guys have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and fire away. I'll also be checking on the chat, so if you have any questions or you need to repeat anything, whatever it is, feel free to interrupt. That's totally fine. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with Google Keep here. Has anybody used Google Keep before? I'm seeing some nods in the videos here. A couple yeses, a bunch of no's. All right. So Google Keep is basically your sticky note app for Google. All right. This is something I actually use personally all the time. I actually just use it for like my grocery lists and stuff. And I have like one of the like Google Home things, and I'll say, you know, the magic words, Google, add, you know, laundry detergent to my shopping list, and it'll add it to the list on the app on my phone, which is really cool. But it's really good for organizing things because you can save these notes. They're all stored in Google in the cloud, so you can get to them from wherever you need. And it's really great for saving websites. It has a drawing feature. You can make these checklists. The Chrome extension is really nice. So let's go and take a look at Google Keep here. Just like all the other Google apps here, it's the name of the app .google.com. So in this case, keep.google. Oops, Google. I can't spell Google. There we go, .com. And take this into Google Keep here. And here's just all of my sticky notes here. And you can see I have a bunch of them that are just these different links. I have some just something about emojis, I don't know. And then we have some pictures, we have a checklist here, and it's really easy, simple to use. At the very top, we have our new note that we can make. We can have a title and a description. So if we want to have, you know, a checklist, we can come in here, and under the three dots, we can do show checkboxes. And maybe if we're making a checklist, so maybe clear emails, we'll do finish grading, prep next week's assignments, all that fun stuff. And we can even change the color if we want to. And we can basically check those off from there. All right. Obviously, really helpful for a shopping list. Personally, I use that. This is the thing I just use all the time for myself. I'll just make a little shopping list, and it's super helpful because what you can also do is set a reminder for yourself, so you'll get a notification at whatever time and date that you want. You can also add collaborators. So just like in Google Docs, we can add a collaborator. They'll get an email notification saying, hey, Dan shared something with you. Shared a Google Keep note with you, and then they can come in and look at the note and edit it with you too. You can also add pictures in here as well. So from your computer, you can do that. You can also archive it to delete it, or we can also just delete the whole thing. You can also add a drawing under those three dots. And this is a very simple way to do a white screen, or I'm sorry, a whiteboard with your students. So like if you're in, you know, a Google Meet live class with your students and you want just a really easy, simple whiteboard to play around with, here's a pretty good one to use. So you can come in here and make your whiteboard here and basically just start your drawing. Woo. Okay, so we'll close out of that here, and they'll save it basically to that note. You can also pin your notes, which will basically just keep them at the top of your list. And you'll notice on the left-hand side, there's also these labels. The labels work the exact same way that they do over in Gmail, so if you're familiar with that. Basically, it's kind of like the idea of folders, they just call them labels. So if I want to add these to a label, these are your different labels. They work the same way as a folder, but the nice thing is you can have them in multiple labels at once. Okay, so if I want this to be in the first period label and the homework label, it can show up under both. That's the nifty thing about that. Okay. And then the other thing that's really, really helpful is this is a really good way to save a bunch of links as well, to organize a bunch of links that you are kind of gathering for whatever purpose. So instead of having your traditional bookmarks up at the top of the screen like normal here, we can save our a bunch of links that we need and kind of organize them in a different way here in Google Keep. So we can combine the links with these different labels that we have. And the really cool thing to do is if we install the Google Chrome extension, it's linked here back on the slideshow for you on slide number 9 there. It's linked over here on the slideshow, and this Google Keep extension, basically what this is going to do is if you're off on a website, so if I go into I'll go into Canva here. And I just want to save this website. I can open up the Chrome extension for Keep. It has this little card here, and I can take a little sticky note, and it's going to basically just grab the web page that you're on, just as it save its URL. And so maybe I'll call this pictures, and say, this is a good thing for art class. And I can even put this in under a label. And then just like that, I now have this new sticky note here for me to refer back to. All right, and again, this is really nice if you need to share a bunch of links with other people. So you can just share a link right over to somebody as well. So instead of sending them a whole email or whatever, you can also use that extension to share an email with somebody right from there too. So if I need to share this with somebody else, put in their email, and there you go. All right, now we'll jump back in here. So there's lots of different ways to actually use Google Keep. Another thing that's really cool is you can use Google Keep just to store a bunch of pictures, and you can get to them when you're in a Google Doc. So if I just go into a brand new Google Doc here, and one thing that kind of gets overlooked is this little tab, this little arrow button way down in the bottom right. And this opens up this little sidebar, and one of the buttons that we have in here is Google Keep. And if we open that up, it opens up a little mini side version here of our Google Keep, and just has all this good stuff that we left in our Google Keep to check out. And the cool thing is, if we have our Google Keep, maybe just use it to like store some pictures that we use often, we wouldn't have to go and do a Google image search every time we want to throw in a picture. So what we can do is if I, maybe if I use this American flag a bunch, I can have this basically just come and be imported right in to my Google Doc in here. All right. It's basically kind of like having a little like sticker bank sitting in here, and you can just then you have your picture in here, and all those things, all those sticky notes that you have in your Google Keep are just going to be saved here in the little sidebar. Pretty handy to have. Okay. And then we'll jump back in here again. All right. And that little sidebar thing is going to show up in Google Docs and in Google Slides. So again, it's really, really helpful if you're using the same pictures over and over again, and you don't want to take up any space on your computer, or if you're on a Chromebook, or if you just don't want to sit there and do a Google image search every time that you are going to use the same picture. You can just basically store it in your Google Keep and then just drag it on over. All right, so here's a bunch of other ways that we can use Google Keep here. So of course you can collect and organize information for papers and presentations or lesson plans that you're just kind of gathering things up. Make all your different labels for your different kind of categories of things. Set some daily reminders for yourself. You can bookmark websites, and this is a good way to share bookmarks or websites with other people. It's really good for note taking, doing reminders based on location. That you can do that in the mobile app. Setting some learning goals, annotating on top of some images, doing some like entrance or exit tickets, a ton of cool stuff that you can do with Google Keep. All right, so I always like to give people, when we do these like all day long sessions here, a little bit of time to play around. So let's take about 5 minutes here. So we'll come back at 9:25 and play around in Google Keep for a little bit. So make some notes, practice with like making a checklist, practice with the little drawing feature, use the sticky notes as like bookmarks, or take some time to install the extension so you can do that. You can create some different labels to organize things in different ways. Maybe set up a comment bank like in that little sidebar. Instead of using pictures, you can use text as well. So if you wanted to have, like back over here, if you wanted this text to be dropped over, you can have that same text be shown over and over again. So it's not only just just pictures that you can throw in here. You can also have text or links, which are helpful too. So if you have a bunch of links that you want to save and things that you're constantly putting into a Google Doc or a Google Slide, keep them in your notes there, and you can just drag them on over. All right, set up the comment bank in color code. All right, so let's take about 5 minutes here, and we'll come back at 9:25. If you have any questions, again, feel free to unmute yourself, and or type right into the chat. All right, so someone had a question. How will we use this for an entrance exit ticket? All right, so what we could do is if we're taking a note, it's not the best option, honestly. It's kind of a funky thing. Like if you want to kind of stretch it that way, I personally probably wouldn't use it that way. It's something some people have done. What you can do is you can add collaborators, add student collaborators, and basically just give a specific student like a specific question, or maybe like a group of students a specific question in this note. Then they would get that note. Then they can like basically respond to your question that you write in here. So you can say, whatever for, oops, for minus, oh god, 4 plus 8. And then you add a student in. I'll add one of my fake students in here. And close that. And then on the student side, he would come in and it's not in his waffle. Oop. He would see this, and then he could answer 12 from in here. And as a teacher, it would be all basically collected in one spot for you. So it would be here, going to be seen here, and you can see Andrew's response. Kind of a funky way to do it. It's an interesting idea. All right, let's see, another question. Would you be able to turn your mic up a little? Yeah, a little bit closer here. Am I quiet for other people too? All right, so for Robin, just see if you can turn up your computer audio. Somebody also asked, can you add things to your waffle? Yes, you can. When you open up your waffle here, it's a scrolling list, so you'll see things. So when you scroll down, you may see more stuff than you normally do, and you can click and drag and move these things around. So if I want, this news thing to be up higher, I can do that. You can also add more from here. Depending on your school, you may or may not be able to add more apps to the waffle here. So there's a ton of stuff that you can actually put in the waffle that's available here. So Katrina had a really good question. So it will keep pop up in Google Classroom. For example, if I have a comment bank, can I pull them as assignments into? The answer is no. Google Keep is not going to show up in Classroom. Google Classroom has its own built-in comment bank. So if you want to reuse the same comments or pictures or whatever over and over again, you will have to just put them in the built-in comment bank that's in Google Classroom. That's a good question. All right, any more questions before we keep on rolling here? All right, so let's go ahead and continue on to our second tool for today, and that's Google Drawings. It's probably like one of my favorite things, honestly. And so what Google Drawings is, like very simply, it's basically just an open blank canvas that you can pretty much put whatever you want on here. All right, so let's take a look at it. So in Google Drawings, it's drawings.google.com, unsurprisingly. You can also find it in your Google Drive if you go under New, all the way down to More, and then you can find Google Drawings in there. Or again, just drawings.google.com. And so what we can do is we can basically put whatever we want in here. It's a blank canvas that we can create our own pictures. We can do some meme making. We can do a whole bunch of basically very simple Photoshop is basically what we can do here in Google Drawings. I use it for a ton of different stuff because it's just so easy to make. We can still create hyperlinks, and we can still put in links to other places, and we can even, there's even a workaround for putting videos into our Google Drawings here. So let's go into it for just a little bit here. So when we first come into Google Drawings, just like anything else, we'll give it a name. Whatever, test drawing. And one side note about this too is Google Drawings is another one of the G Suite apps in here that will also let you post as an assignment in Google Classroom. So we'll get to this in a little bit, but if you are posting an assignment in Google Classroom, you can make the assignment, make a copy for each student. You can also do that with a Google Drawing as well. All right, so if you make like a diagram or something like that in Google Drawings in here, if it's like a Venn diagram or like some sort of chart that students need to fill out, you can still have it make a copy for each student through Google Classroom, which is pretty cool. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and kind of poke around a little bit in here. So first thing is, in this big open space in here, this is our canvas. You'll notice that there's like a little triangle way down on the bottom right of the canvas. If you click and drag that, it'll let you resize it, so you can make the canvas whatever size that you want. This is also how people can make their own custom Google Classroom background, like header image. Okay, let's go ahead and actually let's just start to play around and make one of those. First thing we need to do is change the dimensions of the Google drawing here to match the size of the heading of the Google Classroom header. Just to be clear, what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the header here is, this loads for me here. I'm talking about this background image up here. So there's those default ones that that kind of come along with Google Classroom, but we can actually make our own custom background here, and that's what we'll do. So the first thing we need to do is make the canvas the same size as this background, and those dimensions are 1600 pixels by 400 pixels. So what we'll do is we'll come up to the File menu up at the top, and we'll do Page Setup. It's like third thing from the bottom under the File menu. And we'll do a custom page setup here, but we're going to do it in pixels, and it's 1600 by 400. And then we'll click Apply, and that stretches out the canvas here to be that size. And since we just changed that, just be careful not to click and drag this bottom little triangle again, because it'll mess up your dimensions. So what we'll do is we can pretty much whatever we want on here. So maybe if I want to give this like a different color background, I can right click on top of any blank spot on top of the canvas here, and we can choose background. And we can make our own color here. So maybe I'll give it like a nice light green. Then we'll come in and maybe we'll make a text box, kind of draw out a text box here. And we'll say, Mr. Neeson's remote learning class. And we'll give it a more fun font here. Make this bigger. There we go. And maybe we'll make it white. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Maybe I'll even give it a little drop shadow. If I come under the format options, when I'm highlighted over some text, I can come into format options and give it a drop shadow. We can kind of have it pop out a little bit more. Mess around with that. That looks pretty good. And we maybe want to add a picture in here. So we'll come up under the insert button up here and do image. We'll search the web. I'll just search for school. There we go, make this a little bigger. And maybe I want another picture. I'll do image, do the same thing. Maybe I'll have a little computer to go along with my. Let's see. That looks good. A little word art one here. I can even layer these differently. So if I want like the school to show up basically like on top of this little picture of the computer here, I can come up, if I'm highlighted on either one of the images here, I can go under the Arrange tab, and I can come under Order, and this will change how it's layered. So like right now, the school is below, it's a lower layer than this computer. I want to bring it to the front, and now see it popped up on top. Okay. All right, and so then we'll kind of finish up this. I'll kind of close in this gap a little bit here. And so now, just like that, I have a not too bad looking little classroom header here. And now if I'm ready to make this my Google Classroom background here, I can come up under the file menu, and then I'll find download. And I can either do JPEG or PNG. PNGs are usually a little bit higher quality. And that's how you can just download it as a picture. And imagine making pretty much anything from here. If I want to turn this into my background for my Google Classroom, in the Google Classroom, we'll do upload photo. And I'll just drag this right on top of here. And it'll be just a perfect fit because it's the exact same dimensions. And we'll add that to the theme. And then just like that, I have my classroom created. I should have moved the text over to the right side, I guess, because you can't change where this information shows up. But hey, it's not too bad. Okay, now other things that we can do in here is let me kind of get rid of all this stuff in here. Other things that we can do is we can also add hyperlinks, and just like in Google like Docs or Slides, it works exactly the same way. We can put in some hyperlinks that are placed on top of text or on top of pictures. So if I want to have students, maybe we'll do, maybe I have like a little map project for them to do. And maybe it's their job to click and drag like circles onto like appropriate states or something like that. So we'll make some shapes rather here. Make a circle, there we go. And maybe we'll say, make this transparent in the middle, and then I'll make the border red. I can use these little lines here to make it thicker so it's easier to see. And we'll make some copies of it. If you do Control C to copy and Control V to paste, you can just make a bunch of copies of the same picture. If I highlight over those shapes that I made, this is where I can also use the arrange button here, and I can align them in a certain way. So if I align them in the center, notice they all get kind of centered up in the middle here, and then I come under arrange and align again, put them in, up on the top here. It makes a stack out of the whole, all those little circles that I made. And so if students move them, they're only moving one away from the stack. So if they move one and, okay, put one over Ohio and they put one over Florida, students will then aren't messing up the whole stack there. It's kind of a fun thing. So you can have a whole stack of like these little tokens for students to move around. Okay. If you want to have hyperlinks as well, just like in any other Google thing, it works the exact same way. So if we're highlighted on top of some picture or a text, we can come up to the hyperlink button up here. It looks like a little chain link. Or we can do Control K on top of the picture, or we can do, or you can right click on top of it and choose hyperlink. And then maybe we'll make maps.google.com for that. And so when students come in here, they can also click on this link. And it'll take them over to whatever website you assign it to. Okay. Now there's also a workaround to put videos here into Google Drawings. You'll notice if you come under the Insert tab, there's no option for video. And one thing you may have noticed by now is Google Drawings, a lot of the buttons look pretty much the same as Google Slides, right? Like there's a lot of similarities, and honestly, they are very, very similar. They're essentially the same thing. A Google Drawing is essentially just a one slide Google slide, okay? And that can be handy because sometimes you just don't need a whole slideshow to share. Maybe you just need a simple blank canvas. But what you can do if you really want to have a video show up here in a Google slide, in a Google Drawing, is we can do this little workaround. Let me show you how to do this. So what we'll do is we have to actually go into a Google slide. I'll just make a brand new one here. And we'll insert a video into the Google slide like normal. So I'll come up under Insert and I'll do a video. I'll search YouTube. And I'll search for Crash Course here. I always like those videos. So let's do immune system. That seems appropriate for the times. There we go. And we'll insert that into the slideshow. And if we want to take this video and have it show up in the Google Drawing, all we have to do is come over here and copy it and then paste it over in here. So there's your little workaround for getting a getting a video inside of a Google Drawing, and it'll still work. It'll still be able to play it inside of the video, or I'm sorry, inside of the drawing here for us. So it's kind of a little workaround. So just because there's no insert video option in the insert video in the insert menu, there's your little workaround. We just have to go into a Google slide, put in the video in the Google slide like normal, then copy it and paste it back over here. Okay, and so there's of course a ton of different things that I'm sure you can think of to kind of combine a video and a Google Drawing together. Imagine having a little instructional video here, and then without students having to go anywhere else, there's a video on one side, and then here's like an activity, like a diagram or something for them to fill out, and then that's what they submit. It's all in one spot. They don't have to go to another document. They don't have to go over to a different slideshow, anything like that. It's all in one spot. Okay. All right, so there's a ton more stuff in Google Drawings, of course. You know, you can sit here and mess with your backgrounds. You can also put GIFs in here as well. If you want to insert a GIF into your Google Drawing, it's the same process as it would be for anywhere else. Here's the easiest way that I found, the two easiest ways rather that I have found. One is if you use the Giphy extension. So there's a Chrome extension called Giphy. And when you open it up here, there is just a ton of different GIFs that you can pull in. I see Squidward and I think that's hilarious, so I'm going to come in here and just drag it right on top of our document here. When you insert things from Giphy though, it's going to give you like this little extra text box here that has the original link, but you can just delete that box away. It comes in two separate boxes, basically. One, you have the GIF, and two, you have the text box that has like the source for it. You only need to really keep the GIF there, so you can have Squidward dancing, which is, you know, that's just awesome. You can also, this is another cool thing, you can also crop and change the shape of a picture, including GIFs. So when you're highlighted on top of a picture, it has that blue border around it. We can come up to the crop button here and do the little drop down next to the crop button, and we can crop it into a different shape. So if I want this to be more circular, there we go. I have a little circular dancing Squidward. All right. The other method for inserting GIFs into a Google Drawing, and this will be the same for in a Google Slide, in a Google Doc. It's all the same process here. What you can also do is if you just do a Google image search for whatever you're looking for, and then GIF at the end of it. So if I do dog, GIF, and I come under images, we can just click on any one of these here. And what we'll need to do is we'll right click on top of the preview that kind of gives us a view of what the GIF looks like. We'll right click on top of it, and we need to find open image in new tab. It'll open up in here. In this case, the thing we're really looking for is we need to see the address bar. We need to see the web address end with .gif. Okay, like in this case, it doesn't end with .gif. In this case, we have to find the actual source of it. In this case, we'll right click on top of this preview here. So if this one's from Giphy as well, this is actually just the Giphy website, but it's going to be the same thing. We can open image in new tab here and see how this web address now ends with .gif. That's the thing we really have to look for. Okay, so if you are looking for a very specific GIF and you can't find it in the Giphy extension, that's the way you can. That's what you need to look for the source of it. Okay, so again, the address has to end with .gif. That's the big thing to look for. And then once we copy that address, we can come under the Insert tab back here in our Google Drawing, and under Image, we'll do by URL, and then we'll paste this guy in there. And just like that, we have another GIF. All right. Now, I always love GIFs, those funny little moving pictures and everything, so they're always great to have in there, just because they're fun to look at and kids like them too. All right, somebody has a question. Let's see, would you use share link of this drawing and paste it into Google Classroom as link versus downloading this drawing to use with students? So good question. So if you want to take this and post this as like an assignment or as like an activity for our students to do, what I would do, let me make some space in here. Let me kind of undo some of this stuff here. Let me kind of make some space. So if we imagine let me clean this up a little bit. I'm kind of just doing some undoing here. So let's say we just have like a simple activity here. The activity is here. I'll even put in some directions. Maybe I'll do that. So we have put in our assignments here. Directions. Drag a circle over the following states: Ohio, Texas, and Oregon. Okay, and so there's our directions, right? And this is here's the activity that I want my students to do. How can I put this in Google Classroom for them to actually go and do it? All right, so just like everything else in the Google world here, this is a Google drawing. It's going to be housed, its home is in our Google Drive. So it's going to be sitting here since I just made it from scratch. It's going to be showing up somewhere in here. Let's see, it's under T, there it is. Here's our test drawing here. And let's see, someone else asked a question. Are you going to share this in Google Drive so we can go back and play this with specific things? I'm not sure what your question is there, Robin. So let me show you guys how to take that drawing and put it in Google Classroom and what it will look like for our students. All right, so we'll come into Google Classroom just like normal, and spoiler alert, this is going to be the exact normal process that we're used to. So I'll come into my remote learning class here, go into classwork, and I'll create an assignment. And I'll just call this drawing assignment. And we'll come under add, and from our Google Drive, again, we already made the activity, so here it is. We just need to make sure each student gets a copy of this drawing activity, of this little map activity. So there it is. It's under our recent because I just made it. Now I'll click on add, and now we'll do make a copy for each student, and then just like normal, we assign it out. All right, like I said, even though it's a Google drawing, it works the exact same way to make a copy for each student. So we don't have to worry about students overwriting any work or anything like that. All right, let me see. Got a couple questions in the chat here. All right, so you are going to share this in Google Drive so we can go back and play with specific things. How can we go back and review that you're showing? This whole webinar for today is going to be recorded. It's going to show up on our YouTube channel. I'll give you guys the link afterwards, later today or early tomorrow. When I give you guys your certificates of attendance, you'll also see the link to the recorded version from today if you need to refer back. We have another question. Please, can you show us again how you went from the slides to drawing with the video? Oh, making putting the video in drawings. Sure. So again, by default here, there's no option under the insert menu to put in a video, right? So what we need to do is we have to start in Google Slides. Put in a video in Google Slides as you normally would, and then we copy that and paste it over into Google Drawings. So here's the whole process. So I'll just make a new Google slideshow again. So in our Google slide, go under Insert and Video. Search for whatever you like from YouTube, or if you have a video sitting in your Google Drive, you can do that as well. Grab whichever video you like. And it's that same normal process as you would insert a video into Google Slides. The difference now is we right-click on top of the video in Google Slides and we copy it. Then we come back over to Google Drawings and we paste it over in here. All right, now we have this video sitting in here for everybody to watch. And if they double click on top of the video, or I think it was a one click or a single click actually, then you can watch the video right inside. Okay, let's see. Awesome, okay. All right. All right, and then so like I was mentioning here, if you post a Google drawing in Google Classroom for students to do, I'm in a student account now. If the student comes in and they need to go and do an assignment for you, and so here's our drawing assignment that we just did a little bit ago. And just like any other Google Doc or slide, whatever it is, if you had it set to make a copy for each student, here is this student's version of this activity. So then he comes in here and he'll do his circle. So you drag one over Ohio, one over Florida, one over Texas, and one over Oregon. Did I spell Oregon wrong? Is it E-N? That's O-N. I'm an idiot. I swear I'm a social studies teacher. Anyway, and so then that's the activity. Unlike in like Google Docs, you don't get like a turn-in button up here, unfortunately, but that's not that big of a deal. Students can still come in here and click on turn-in. All right. So you're still able to have students do work in the exact same way with a Google drawing. The nice thing is you have a lot of freedom for creating your drawing. It's really, really good for making like those digital graphic organizers, you know, so you can sit there and make things a lot easier that way. Okay. So of course, there's tons of different ways to use Google Drawings. You can annotate, label some images, create some graphic organizers, use it as a digital whiteboard. That's one thing I forgot to show here. If you want to have kind of free draw over a Google Drawing, under this line tool here, if you do the drop down, you could do scribble, which allows you just to draw whatever you like with your cursor. It's always hard to draw things with just a regular mouse, but if you have like one of those like pads where you can actually draw things, it makes it a lot easier. So that's another thing you can check out. Making infographics, making timelines, making comic strips, making an interactive image where you make different parts of the image hyperlink over to other things. You can digitize your signature, make some clip art, make a meme, a ton of different stuff that you guys can do in Google Drawings. All right. So here on slide 20 here, let's take another 5 minutes again and take a few minutes and kind of play around a little bit more in Google Drawings. Maybe make a custom Google Classroom banner. There's a template for you here on slide number 20. Maybe make a comic, make a meme, practice inserting a GIF, and then you can save it as a JPEG or a PNG. If you want it to have a transparent background, that's another thing to mention here. If you want to have a picture with a transparent background, let me get rid of this background here. If it has this black and gray checkerboard, that means it's going to be a transparent background. So it's not going to have a white background. It's not going to have any sort of color. It'll just be transparent. So whatever images or text or whatever that you have on this canvas will just basically show up as like floating. Okay. If in order to do that, to save that, you'll do download as a PNG. That type of file will let you do a transparent background. Okay. I did see another question. There's also the option for downloading as a PDF. I believe if you do download it as a PDF, hyperlinks will stay there. Okay. So I can actually test that real quick. If you want to have these pictures still be interactive, still be hyperlinked, but you need to download them for some reason, you can do download as PDF. And I'll open this with Adobe here. And the hyperlinks do still work. Okay, and that'll only work if you download it as a PDF though. All right, if you download it as a JPEG or a PNG, it won't work. Okay. All right. So let's take about another 5 minutes here. So we'll come back at 9:57. How about that? And kind of play around a little bit. If you have any more questions, again, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away, or type into the chat. Sure. Changing the background in a drawing. So if you want to change the background, all we have to do is just right-click over any blank part of the canvas. So like I'm hovered over just kind of this corner over here, just right-click on top of it. Then we can go under background and we can change it to whatever color that we want. We mentioned using this for infographics. Are there any templates that can be used? There are. Good question as well. So there are actually templates that you can do too. Yeah, let me get rid of all this stuff in here. I have too much junk. So what we can do is if under the Insert tab, there's this part that says Diagram, and this opens up a bunch of different templates in here. So we can have things that are like a grid or a hierarchy or a timeline or a process relationship. Here's like maybe I'll do a cycle, and here's all these different ones. And then just like that, we have a, let me kind of resize this guy here. We have this diagram here, and it basically has a lot of those shapes filled in for you already. And all you have to do is basically just fill in the actual text and pictures and stuff from there. There's a pretty good number to choose from. You can even like change like how many different steps there are and the different colors and things like that. So there's a few of them that you can kind of play around with, absolutely. Those diagrams are also in Google Slides as well. It's in the exact same spot. So if you go under Insert and then Diagram, you can also put those in there as well. All right, any more questions before we keep on rolling here? Now there are, as another side note for Google Drawings, there are a ton of templates out there that aren't built into Google Drawings here. I forgot to link them on the slideshow here, but if you just do a Google search for Google Drawings templates, you'll come into like all these different websites, like Ditch That Textbook. If you've ever been on his website, he has a ton of different graphic organizers and things like that that he's just put together as templates that you can use. So if you come across any of these things, like here's a vocabulary concept map, and you'll be able to make a copy of that template. And then here, he created all these different types of templates in here, so you don't have to sit here and make all these different text boxes and all that annoying stuff. You can just basically have this template here made, and you just got to fill it in with your own instructions, and then boom, you're done. All right. So there's tons and tons of these. I mean, this is just one page, and there's 25 of them on here. So again, if you just do a Google search for Google Drawings templates, there's a ton that you can find. Okay. So let's continue on here. Oh, we have another question. To make comic strips, can you make 3 separate boxes? I just make lines to block off 3 boxes. Yeah, you can do that, whichever way that you like. I've seen people that make just like a 1x3 table. I've seen people that just make 3 squares, or you just make 1 big square and just draw some lines. Doesn't matter, because in the end, it doesn't really make that much of a difference, as long as the comic fits in those boxes. That's all that really matters. Okay. So